Welcome to today's USP and PharmaTech webinar, Entering U.S. Markets, What Does It Take? Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. Next. Each registration is unique and grants the right for the individual registrant only to view this webinar. Sharing this webinar with unregistered viewers, either during or after its performance, violates Pharmatech Associates copyright and is prohibited. Next. If you have not already done so, we ask that you take some time to read the Pharmatech Associates course disclaimer. You can download this presentation, including the disclaimer, from your USP Education account. Please allow the instructions in your confirmation email to download the presentation. Next. We have two presenters for today's webinar. Sharisha Jadapali, CEO at Pharmatech Associates, Bikash Chatterjee, President at Pharmatech Associates. Presenting first today is Bikash.
Okay, so we should get started. All right, here we go. So, Sarisha, quick question for you. You spent a fair amount of your career in the industry outside the US. What is the attraction to drug developers and manufacturers looking to enter the US market?
You're absolutely right, Bikash. There is significant interest in the US market, and I think there's three reasons. First, just the sheer size of the US market. Given the overall pharma market of about 1.6 trillion, 40% of that is the US market and growing. Oncology drugs really are leading that growth, as we all know. So just the sheer size of the opportunity is attractive, understandably. In two, I think the second reason is drug shortages. I think over 90% of the prescriptions in the US are generics. And many of these are life-sustaining drugs. They could be antibiotics, critical oncology drugs, and the number of drugs on shortage is significant. It's over 300 on the list at any given time. The average tenure of a drug on shortage is about 18 months. And during COVID, I think we all realized the vulnerability of the supply chain, how delicate that can be, and the disruptions that can happen. So there has been increased interest in onshoring, also reshoring close by. And with all of this interest, I think it's created for some countries an opportunity to see how they can alleviate this problem of drug shortages for the US. So that's another big reason. And I think finally, the biologic space is a very attractive space right now. It's huge and it's growing. The biosimilars are targeting about a $40 billion market currently, and those in development are even larger. So those those biosimilars in development, the market they're targeting is currently close to 100 billion and growing. And Bikash, you know how the biosimilar approval journey has gone in the US.
Yeah, it's definitely been one where the FDA has been learning while industry has been learning. You could say the US was certainly a little bit late to the biosimilars game, but they certainly have made up with a vengeance since 2015, approving 59 biosimilars to date. So an extraordinary number. We have more categorizations in other countries, I think, with this non-interchangeable, interchangeable designation, but even that now is on the table as FDA's most recent guidance, I think it just came out in June also, is actually throttling back a little bit on the interchangeable designation, looking to sort of simplify the messaging to both healthcare givers as well as physicians and probably insurance providers as well, as to when isn't an appropriate time to prescribe a biosimilar. So I look for this market to explode over the next 5 to 10 years, no question about it.
So given those three reasons then, right? Sheer size of the US market, there's drug shortages, that's an opportunity. And now the bio market, as you mentioned, given US's approvals growing, um, this creating this really attractive picture for ex-US companies. So what are the regulatory pathways then, Vikash, that the drug sponsors should consider while they decide on products to introduce to the US market?
Oh, yeah. So quite simply, there's really small molecule and large molecules. You could argue there are other modalities, but let's just deal with these two major sort of categories of drug therapy which make up the lion's share of the U.S. market. Out there, pharmaceuticals or drugs tend to be small molecules. These are chemical synthesis active ingredients here. They have two categories of pathways. So if it's a new chemical entity, it's a new drug, it's an innovator product out there, they follow a 505(b)(1). This is your classical drug development scenario in which you do safety to justify your IND, and then you do a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 sort of application. There are accelerated frameworks within that in which you can come to market faster depending on the nature of your drug and the disease state that you're trying to treat out there. And then we have an avenue or a pathway for generic drugs. We call it an abbreviated new drug application. That can either be a 505(b)(2). A 505(b)(2) is something in between sort of a classical generic, which is a 505(j), in which we simply are looking to prove bioequivalence with the reference licensed drug out there. A 505(b)(2) is sort of a condensed new drug application in which the drug sponsor is taking a molecule that has been approved and doing something different with it. Perhaps you are increasing the bioavailability of it, or perhaps you're putting it in a different dosage form or modality, extended release, etc. around that. And there's some intellectual property associated with that. You still have to do your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, but they're much smaller. So it's faster and it's cheaper to do. So, also, upon approval, you get 3 years market exclusivity on top of that. So the interesting sort of nuance between a classical generic and a new drug entity. On the biologic side, it's very much the same thing. We have your classical biologics license application in which we're doing the same sort of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 demonstration of clinical safety and efficacy. And there's a generic avenue. We don't call them generics on the biologic side. This is the biosimilar drug format that you mentioned a minute ago here, in which it's a slightly abbreviated, it's a significantly abbreviated application in which the focus is really on the characterization of the molecule. We call it, the FDA calls it the demonstrating the totality of evidence. And there is a PK, PD study that has to be done and a clinical demonstration as well. So it's a much smaller sort of a pathway for anyone looking to bring a biologic to the marketplace.
So that's very specific, distinct pathways depending on the modality, the product, the subcategory. So then the fundamental question for a sponsor considering US market is the selection of the drug, identifying what is it that they want to go to the US market with, right? So in your view, Vikash, from your experience, what may be some of the considerations that the sponsors should look at when they're identifying a particular drug to select, to start with?
No, I think that's a great question. I think it seems easy. It's a very lucrative and attractive market out there, but there are a number of considerations that can sort of affect your journey to the U.S. market. One of the areas, I think, obviously, when you're selecting your molecule, you need to ask yourself why you're selecting that molecule. Are you looking to enter the market as simply and as quickly and as easily as possible? Perhaps you want to choose a molecule where you're dealing with a treatment therapy where it's not life sustaining, for example, and the characterization and clinical requirements around that are very straightforward. Perhaps the clinical demonstration is quick, easy, and well understood. This is one pathway to go. You need to think about the economics of this. Are you looking to enter the market because you want to maximize your profitability? Is it a strategic decision in which there's no competition? Perhaps one of your drug shortages molecules is why you're looking to come into the U.S. and take that market because there's really no competition. So understanding these pieces are very important before you begin your journey, because it can dramatically change the path you take. One area which I think folks often don't think about is this notion of the IP landscape out there. Intellectual property isn't something that's sort of intuitive when it comes to drug design out there, but it's really important in the generics world. We'll just focus on the generics world for now, as to that you understand the IP landscape going into it. The agency's got something called the Orange Book. The Orange Book lists the patents associated with the reference licensed drug, and you need to see how your product is going to stack up against that. So they've designated them paragraph 1, 2, 3, and 4, and depending on the nature of what you're looking to claim, the complexity and the rules around doing that are different. For example, if you are going for a paragraph 4 designation on your ANDA, you have 45 days within which to notify the drug innovator of the RLD that you are going to basically claim that their patents are not enforceable going forward, in which case they have 30 days to respond as to whether they're going to sue you or not. And if they do choose to sue you, usually the FDA will delay any decision on this application for about 30 months. So you need to think about how you're going to come into this scenario. There's also scenarios where the RLD's got sort of method of use patents, and there's we call that a Section 8 statement, in which case you're going to certify that your particular process does not infringe upon any of these method of use patents. So having a really clear understanding of the intellectual property landscape is essential, I think, to being able to have a clear understanding of what you're going to do in terms of your filing, and making sure that you do any notifications that are required as you move forward. So as you can say, there's a lot of things to consider as we're moving our programs forward.
Critical aspect to think about in terms of IP for our audience.
I completely agree. And to that end, I mean, Sarisha, at a high level, would you say that there's a playbook or a roadmap that you would recommend for drug developers and manufacturers maybe to refer to as they're looking to put in place their U.S. market entry plan and strategy?
Absolutely, Bikash. All markets have their own unique requirements when a firm is considering launching a product. But really, the playbook we put together for the US, it reflects some of the unique elements we have found to be important based on both regulatory considerations, but also unique commercial processes for selling and distributing a drug in the US. So very specific to the US. I know there's a lot going on this visual here. We'll walk you through the main elements so that there's some good takeaways, right? Because you just shared the different regulatory pathways for small molecule, for biologics. Then within that, there are so many types of drugs. As a drug sponsor, one has to look at the regulatory compliance requirements by US FDA to really arrive at what fits in with the company's portfolio. So that's the portfolio analysis part, where the company's strategy from a portfolio perspective has to be in sync with the regulatory strategy. Otherwise, it would be difficult to get the right outcomes. And one of the areas then we have been helping clients significantly on is gap analysis and then remediation planning. So what I mean by that is, depending on which markets a drug sponsor is currently serving, their infrastructure, facilities, people, processes, tools may all be at a certain guide, catering to a certain guideline or guidance for a certain market. From there, comparing it to US FDA requirements and seeing what the gap may be, what the difference may be in regulatory philosophies, that is important. And it really depends also on the risk profile of the product. So if it's a sterile injectable, which is at a much higher risk profile compared to an oral solid dose drug, for instance, that is at a lower risk profile. Now, the risk profile, the differences here impact how the agency is going to look at your quality system, quality maturity, readiness to sell in the US. Now, based on this in-depth gap assessment, we are able to then plan for remediation. And so that is the parts where you have to think about gaps and remediation plans. We also then, from a commercial strategy perspective, have to think through the readiness to sell. For instance, US has a very different licensing requirement. Every state requires a separate license to sell. That may be very different from what the drug sponsors used to in their domestic market or in other markets that they sell to. So what are the choices then? The commercial strategy includes, do you want to apply for a license in each of the states? Or would you want to just partner with a third party like a McKesson or an Amerisource, where they have these licenses, they have the infrastructure, they are already in play. So would you want to take advantage of that? Now, each of these choices obviously comes with its own trade-offs in cost, in effort, and in ease of doing the business. So one has to ask themselves, does the effort involved in building it all from scratch ourselves